Welcome to the Canadian Guild of Stage Directors and Choreographers podcast channel. My name is Jen Thiessen.
And I'm Kyla Musselman, and we'll be here to guide you through these episodes, which are made possible thanks to Canada Council for the Arts.
The Canadian Guild of Stage Directors and Choreographers, CGDC, is a national arts service organisation advocating for the rights, interests and protection of stage directors and choreographers and their assistants and associates.
The following 3 episodes are snippets from our membership series titled Expanding Our Vision as Canadian Creators, featuring experts who help shape the industry at large. So, here we go.
Thomas Swayne is a Canadian-born producer and executive producer with Sonia Friedman Productions. He works on some of the most ambitious theatrical projects on Broadway and beyond. His producing credits include Dead Outlaw, Stranger Things: The First Shadow, Merrily We Roll Along, New York, New York, The Piano Lesson, Funny Girl, and Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. With experience spanning Broadway, the West End, and international touring productions, Thomas brings a wealth of knowledge in developing and producing groundbreaking work that resonates with audiences worldwide. He holds a Bachelor of Fine Arts from the Toronto Metropolitan University, or TMU, and an MFA from Columbia University. Welcome, Thomas.
Hello, thanks for having me.
We're going to start off with talking about your Canadian roots. We love a Canadian that heads off into the world. So can you tell us about your connection to theater in Canada and how did you start down this path of producing?
Yeah, I'm from Ottawa, born in Barrhaven, for those who have been there. It used to be called Nepean, and now it's all part of Ottawa. And went to theater school at what then was Ryerson, now TMU, in the acting program in 2008. Started, maybe 7. I'm not sure, but yeah, I was an actor. That's what I thought I was kind of going to do when I arrived at theater school, and then I think it was the first semester. I'm like second cousins with Jory Rossiter, who's an actor, was an actor in Toronto, is an actor. I mean, he's alive, but actor in Toronto. He was like, "Hey, like, let me take you to a bar and introduce you to some people." And me and my friend in theater school, Kira Galoyan, who's obviously an actor in Toronto, we went underage to Jenny Burke's cabaret on a Monday night with like a fake ID. I think I was 17, and just met like a bunch of people. And that night, I think Mitchell Marcus was there, and they were performing songs from Edges, which he was producing with Sarah Farr, Gabby Epstein,
Eric Craig,
and Jordan Bell. Is that right? I think so. And I saw that, and I was just like, oh, and I knew that musical already. And I was like, what's this? And who's Mitchell? And what's this theater company? And I think after that night, I didn't know anyone. And I messaged Mitchell on Facebook. I found him. I was like, hey, like, I know nobody. I'm in theater school, but if you need help putting up posters or just like, I'm really curious, like what you do. I love the show. So if I could help out, didn't know what producing was, didn't know that word, had never produced anything, like didn't even know it was a job. But I just was like, hey, can I like help you? Because I'm in theater school and I just want to like meet people. And so I did. We like put up, me, Sarah Farr, and Mitchell put up posters for like 3 hours. And it was like really odd and a weird way into meeting people. And I knew nobody. And then I just slowly, like every year of theater school, I basically, whenever I had free time, I'd message Mitchell and say like, what can I do for you? And that lasted like 7 years. And I put up posters, and then I got a grant for myself one summer to be a fundraising intern. Like, didn't know what that was. I had to write letters to grant agencies and misspell them all. Like, not great in that job, but I funded it myself with the Canadian grants, and we did it. And then so that by the time I graduated theater school, I was like, oh, I actually know I know as much or more about producing or whatever that role was, producer, than I do acting. And certainly, like, I'm more connected in that world already. And so I basically was able to work as a producer right after I graduated. I acted for a bit, but I worked with Mitchell. I got their first Metcalf grant. It was the first year they got it with me. And then I think they've had it every year since then. The Metcalf intern artistic director role, I think it was called. That was 15 years ago, something like that. Those are my roots. And then I stayed there for a while producing. And then I got a job with Disney. And then they moved me to London. And then I've not moved back since. But I have produced in Toronto since, so that's good.
Fantastic. What does your daily life look like as a producer?
It's a great question because every day is so different. And I say that with pride because I I don't think I would be good. People are like, why aren't you like, my mom's like, why aren't you a lawyer? Like, you'd be a great lawyer. It's like, maybe technically, but I actually would be bad because I get so bored so quickly of things. And there's something about the multifaceted role of a producer that I really, really like. Like, every day is completely different. It's like, there's always an emergency on one of my shows, and then beyond that, as Jen knows, and then beyond that, there'd be like a press meeting, a marketing meeting, a script session with a director, listening to a new sample of a song from a composer and giving notes. Like it is such a bandwidth of potential on that day, and I think like it's really hit my skills because like weirdly I'm always like, God, why did I go to theater school? Like I could have gone to like anything and still become a producer. But truly, I do think the difference of why I've been able to have a career and hopefully why I'm good at my job, or at least I'm still have a job, if I'm not good at it. It's knowing like where everybody sits on the productions. I can find an entry point, I think, with everybody and know like how they do their job and what they need. And so when I communicate, it's not like, the reputation of a producer. So maybe less in, I feel like it's less in Canada because, we all come up in different, wear many hats and we're used to pivoting. But certainly in like London and in the States, like producer bad. Like it's quite like it's like money people who maybe don't care about the employees or don't care about the artists, and it is a big thing to overcome because that's not how I came up in Canadian theater. Like we all do it together, and so I think yeah, I think it's like the multifaceted of the job is good, but every day is different, like so different.
I think that's such an interesting observation, Thomas. It truly is in Canada. We all direct, produce, write, perform. We all have these just to cobble together a career. I think that it does serve us well that we have knowledge of other departments.
Totally. I do think it's my secret weapon. I can know. I'm like, no, I know what this person needs and why that's important. And also I can also be like, and now I'm going to challenge you. I don't think it's important, and this is why. And I can actually speak to the specificity of like, oh, this person's accent's not great, or it is great, or you know what, it's not great, but like it doesn't matter. Like it's fine. It's not offensive. Just move on. Like move on. Move to the next person. And I think it's like triage. You say like, what is my day like? It's truly triage. It's triage. I have like 5 or 6 shows I run right now, and it's just like, where is my attention needed? And most importantly, where is it not? Because I think a good producer is not a micromanager. It's someone who can really delegate well, but in the act of delegation, it's knowing where you're needed when. And you're not always asked. You're not told where to be, so you have to be proactive and know where to spend your time, or when just like relax and not get involved. Because often that's a good way of doing it. So.
So, the theme of tonight's discussion is expanding our vision of Canadian creators. So, how important do you think is the relationship between the director and the producer?
It is supremely important. I think the producer and the director sharing the vision for the show and really understanding that they're on the same page. One of my greatest flops of all time is New York, New York, which was like, I thought it was a beautiful show, but it didn't do very well and we closed very quickly. But I really learned working with Susan Stroman on that show. She directed and choreographed it. And just like, it was my first time really on a show with a lot to lose, with such a large production in which we did lose, was just like how close the communication can be between producer and director, like, and being very transparent, emailing all the time, throwing her ideas. Hey, we're using this press release line. Does this make sense? Or like, hey, we just did a photo shoot with the actors. Like, what do you think? Or she would text me like, hey, here's a song that Candor just wrote. What do you think? Like, it's also how people have just described to me, like, what's the definition of a good marriage? And my mentor once told me, it's just when you have their back and they know you have their back. And I think like in some ways that is the same with producer and director. It's like they need to know you have their back, and vice versa. I think you need to know that the director is representing you well in the room, and it's an inviting space for you, and vice versa. And like you're a team, and I think it's very easy in this industry, especially in New York, for there to be like creative team, everyone down to the company, and then big divide producer. And I think that happens quite often. And it's something and it happens naturally. These are big shows with a lot to lose and a lot of people. But my biggest goal is to like make that divide less drastic and for people to know that like we're all on the same team and we're just working together.
With that relationship, do you go in with certain expectations that you communicate ahead of time with the director? How does those expectations work?
Um, it's funny. I'm working with a director right now who um is quite prolific in New York, and I've been amazed. I guess like Sonia, who's my one of my mentors and my boss, she always says like, don't assume anything. Like never assume anything. And I think that's like a very good way of approaching any new relationship, and certainly a new director or producer relationship. I think it's very easy for us to bring our experience, our likes or dislikes, our trauma to new professional and creative relationships. And I think there's a difference between bringing those things versus learning from those things, then leaving it at the door and approaching the show fresh. But with Stro, it was like from scratch. I trust you. Let's get this done together. I was like, okay, Mr. Ullman, like I'm here for you. And with this one, it's like, I don't trust you. And you need to prove I that I deserve to trust you, basically. Not those words, but that's kind of the impetus. And it's like, okay, so we're gonna like start from scratch and we're gonna build building block to building block. It's kind of like for lack of a better phrase, cracking a code. It's like, what does this director need to be successful? Do they need me around more? Need me around less? Do they want me in casting? Do they not? Do they feel it's oppressive for me to be there versus not? Like, and just kind of finding that vocabulary. I think for shows to be successful, it has to like not be about you or about your vision. You have to enable the artist and enable the team to be successful. And that means like, giving them what they need. And when you can't do that, clearly communicating why. It doesn't mean not challenging people. It doesn't mean not giving notes. It doesn't mean not saying actually no, and this is why. But it's just trying to be honest, and not take anything for granted. Or to quote Sonia, not assume anything.
How does the relationship change once the show opens?
Oh, I think it really depends. I think that again, some directors are there every other day, opening night, and they're still there giving notes, and they are putting in actors, and they're watching every understudy run, and they're like super present. And I would say that's probably like 25%, maybe a third of directors I've worked with want to do that. And even like not the ones you expect. Sometimes I think the biggest directors are the ones that remain involved in their shows in a lot of detail, and maybe that's why they remain successful or the shows are successful. And and then some are literally like opening night. Okay, bye. There's a show. Run it. We'll recast it. Let me know, and we'll circle back. And I love that. It's like there's something great about both examples, but like I think it goes to the same theme of like don't assume, because you can make a lot of assumptions of how you're going to work with somebody, but even someone in the same role, it will drastically differ, which goes back to that fresh resetting every time you approach a project and approach people, which probably applies to life as well as work. But um,
Absolutely. All right, now we've had a good New York conversation. We're going to shift to Canada.
yeah.
Um, we have a very small commercial scene here. Not very many. Most of our shows are not for profit in the not for profit sector. How do you think? Do you think there's a way to shift that in Canada that we can find more of a commercial scene?
Yeah, it's so funny. Like, and for those who don't know me, I produced Harry Potter in Toronto. So I've done one big show there, and I also was on the producing team of Life After this past year. So I've spent some time doing commercial theater in Canada, and one of my goals in life is to like kind of I want to bring back a lot of creative development in Canada and have it be like a home for development. I think like Canadian artists are top. I mean, it only takes whenever we cast a show and it's like, hey, let's go to Toronto for an audition session. And they're like, where are all these people? Why do we know all these people? And I'm like, yeah, exactly. Which is why like there's a billion Canadians in Harry Potter because I'm like, yeah, come on down. Like we gotta bring them all. Everyone's gonna do the show. I think the tourism numbers and the lack of American tourists needing a passport whenever that was passed after 9/11, like I think the barriers of getting to Toronto travel wise just became slightly hard enough that northern New York, those millions of people between Detroit, Chicago, Buffalo, now they're like, we can fly for a $90 flight to New York City and just go see theater if we want to. And the quality of the tours that come, they can just, we'll just go see it in our hometown. It has shifted historically, I think, the commercial scene to being less about international folks coming to Canada and about the Canadian. Now it's about the Canadian audiences fostering the shows that are there. I'm guessing, I don't know the numbers, I'm guessing international tourism for Canadian shows, both profit and not for profit, are not a huge percentage of anyone's sales. I do think the divide, though, also every single day, the divide between not for profit and commercial is, at least in the States and then maybe a little bit in the UK, I do think it's slowly deteriorating. It's getting a little bit like, what's the difference? Not that many shows make money, right? Not that many shows recoup their investment. Some do, and some make a lot of money. Most don't. It feels like everyone in this industry, regardless of what hat you say you wear, commercial or not for profit, we are all just trying to figure out how to keep doing theater at a high level. And I think partnership is bigger than ever and more important than ever. How do those ecosystems help each other? I think like, a perfect example in Canada right now is like Natasha Pierre with Crows, like in Mirvish, like a not-for-profit theater working, well, theaters, I guess, with musical stage, working together, doing something fantastic. And then the commercial theater picking up that show and it just feeling like an extension of that show. It's sort of same branding. It just could have, but it becomes commercial. I think we're going to see that more and more and more. I think we're in the States right now. There used to be this kind of, you go out of town to a regional theater and the commercial producer will pay some additional money for the local producer to put on Aida in Atlanta or put up whatever musical somewhere. And then it goes to New York and it feels like they're kind of two different things. Now, like, I don't know, it just kind of feels like all kind of one thing and we're all just trying to make it work. And I have to say, for the record, I claim I'm not a commercial producer. I just say I'm a producer. And it depends on what the project is, where the way that we go about finding it. Like I'll read a play and be like, okay, brand new play, really exciting, maybe not commercial, but like, is Oh Mary commercial? I would say no. I would say it's not a commercial play until it's really fucking good. And then people are like, oh, it's commercial. It's selling like, it's only commercial because it got great reviews and it's really well written. It's of a very specific tone of voice. It's really funny. It's short. And so it just checks all these boxes, but it checks boxes after the fact. Before the fact, it's just a risky, small, queer show that maybe has a limited audience, right? And it turns out, no, it actually has a huge audience because it knows what it is. And I think more than ever, what I'm excited about in bridging the gap between the two portions of the industry is kind of removing that thinking. Dead Outlaw, good example. It wasn't ultimately commercial, but it was a great show. Well, let's say it was successful on Broadway, I wish it would have been, but let's say it was. You don't want to open that straight in New York because you don't know, maybe it needs creative space, it needs to marinate. You want to like bring it to a smaller theater first. If I read Dead Outlaw, I don't go like, oh my gosh, just go to Broadway right away. But I know that maybe Broadway is my goal because that is the work that I do. So how do I bring together all of the partners to enable the show to happen? And the first stage of the show happening is working in the subsidized sector. It's finding a theater that loves the play as much as I do and saying, hey, I have this play. I have no idea how to do it. I don't know what the goals are here, but you read it. And if you love this material as much as I do, let's have a chat about it. And let's start to craft like how this will happen. Um, and then in success, and then if the show is good, you just keep going to the next stage. So I do think like as a maker, as an artist, as a writer, I don't think the sectors are that different. And I think good producers and good producing, I see myself as a connector in that way. Like my job is to be like, to see one thing, go, this thing should go over here with that person, then we'll bring it there because they like this. And like today, I'm working with a Canadian theater on a show. And I was like, this theater in Ireland will love this play. And then we'll send it to the Almeida because they might like it because they have a 400-seat theater. And then if that's good, we can go to the West End, like it's all like, but it's all connected and it's all one development stage. And I think often people maybe think it's like there is no strategy, or and maybe often there isn't, but that's how I work. It's like, how do we do this the long way around? And for the good of the project and the good truly like of the theater, because me taking a risky show and bringing it to Broadway with no development time and just rolling the dice on the investor's money is reckless. It's reckless financially and it's reckless creatively because more than ever, things take time to marinate. It's very hard to break into the zeitgeist. Like even like, I don't know what you guys think. Like today there was a call about like, has Stranger Things made it into the zeitgeist again? Like, are we back? And I was like, do we have a zeitgeist anymore? Like truly, we're all so siloed in how we receive news, how we receive culture. I don't even know if there is a zeitgeist, maybe in the way that maybe there was 15 years ago, which also kind of blew my brain. So I think more than ever, it's knowing what you're after. And I'm not sure broadness, which I think historically is what people would have defined commercial theater as, like a broad show that everybody will like. I don't know if that exists as much anymore.
In that answer, you sort of started talking about the talent of Canadians.
Mm.
And we were interested in talking to you because, we believe that Canadian directors and choreographers, it is possible for us to think larger. And I think we are sometimes, due to budgets here in Canada and in the not-for-profit sector, we don't get to think as big as we would like. So how do you think we can increase that Canadian footprint on the global stage? Or how do you see us breaking through?
I do think about this a lot in my work. I think, and we've talked about this before, Stephanie, in the budgeting of the work, I think there's not necessarily there's like the day one of rehearsal and then go, but the amount of pre-pro, the amount of choreography labs, staging work, dramaturgy sessions, like all of this stuff is, I think, invaluable to making a show good in the first place. But because a lot of shows sometimes it's like, hey, you have 6 weeks here, then you're done. And I think there's something about that which is great because it's specific and it's of a time and a place, but it's harder to budget all this development work for something has a finite life experience versus something that has maybe a strategy to go further. And I think the question I would have for the producers at any theater or theater companies, like, what are your goals here? Because if your goals here are like to do Sound of Music for 6 weeks at Christmas and make a bunch of money, because that money will sustain, which I love, by the way. I love the Sound of Music. I think we should do it every single year, but like really differently. Like I want to do, I really like top of my list is the Sound of Music, but like it's like really dark, like really crazy dark. Like so dark, like and then the other idea is like Act One is really bright, and so like the kids can go to Act One, and then at the intermission it gets really fucking dark, and then all the kids leave because it's past their bedtime. But you get both audiences. I'm like, I kind of love that idea. Like kids come with like Gretel goes to bed, then they go to bed, and then the Nazis come and it gets fucking dark. Anyway, that's my pitch for Sound of Music. But so like it's good. The Sound of Music should happen every year, but like why are we doing it? To make money,
Mm.
manage costs. We can maybe use scale, but here's why. But then if you're developing a new work at musical stage or wherever, it's like, are we trying to do something that can go abroad? Are we trying to do something that will be a co-production with three other theaters? And so we're divesting that or splitting the developmental project across four budgets, there's four theaters, not just one. And so it sort of just, I think, goes back to that strategy of like, what is the goal of the show? And I think it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing for the goal of the show to be Sound of Music and make money and go home because it's clear. It's like it's clear what we're trying to do, and that's great. But I think if the artists involved in a work think they're doing something and involved in a project that should have legs, that should go far, and that is special, then on the producing end, it's your job to be like, I agree and I'm a part of that, or to be like, I don't have those resources and this is why. But again, it's just that like level setting of communication. I think it's just being clear about goals.
And just continuing on that, like, how do we get US or international producers to see our work? Not necessarily just properties, but work as directors and choreographers and getting those Canadian productions.
Yeah.
If you have a thought about that.
It's hard. It's hard to get anyone to do anything or to go see any show. Like I produced my first play, well, not my first play. I produced a play, my first big play in New York, in my own name last year in Chicago and Atlanta. And it was like a big out of town with this great Pulitzer Prize winning or finalist playwright, the hottest director. And I was like, it's a great play. It won all these like pre-production awards. It was like, it's gonna be the biggest thing ever. And I was like, I can't wait to invite everybody. Like nobody came. Literally nobody came. And this was the Goodman, this was the Alliance Theater, and it was like five people came and I begged them. I was like, please come. I will like, please come see my show. And so it goes back to that apathy thing, that zeitgeist thing. Like I do think it's like just a challenge to get people to to focus on things that aren't theirs.
Mm.
And so often everything that when something's really good, it opens and then oh it's good, then it closes in 2 weeks. So you don't actually get to see it when it's at a stage that should be seen. So one part is like get a good recording. Like I know equity doesn't always allow them, but like get a good recording of your show. Invest in that. And video and sound. Make sure I can hear the show. So you can send it to a theater and they can see the stage picture in high quality. So if they put it on their TV, you see it and you can see almost the sweat uh, of the actor like I have right now. And hear it. You want to hear the language. And there's like I saw, I don't even know the rules, so I'm not going to say, but I saw a recording of a Canadian play recently, and it was like, it was crystal clear, and I heard every
Mm.
word, and I felt like I was there. And it really helped me unlock what the show needed, who's going to like it, why, how big it is, the production value, could it get bigger, could it get smaller? Not as good as seeing it in the theater, but I do think like investing that money is totally worthwhile. And not a camcorder at the back of the house, a proper thing, and whatever that means. And like, and if it's a theater, invest in it once and then use it for 10 years. It doesn't have to be top of the line, but just like something that is good. And the second is, again, all goes back to money, but it's true. Budget travel money for people you want to bring to see the show. And that's like hard money to budget for, and it's hard money to find because it's very like very future forward. And again, when we're like, as an artist, and you're like, well, I'm trying to get 2 weeks of pre-production or a budget to fly some rich dude to come see my play. Like, but it is worthwhile. If you can say to someone, hey, blank person, hey, blank theater, I really think you would like the show, and I'm going to fly you up. I'm going to fly you up and put you up at Le Germain for one night, and I want you to come see the show, and I'm going to take care of you because it's important for me that you see the show. And I do think that that investment is worth it. And this, not everyone needs that, and not everyone's going to ask you to pay. But I do think being able to offer it is a different position of strength than being like, come please see my show. And it's like, well, it's going to cost them $1,000 to come see your show. By the time they fly in and get a hotel and whatever. And it's sort of just like, you're asking them.
Mm.
And especially if it's international people. And it's not everyone's, and maybe there's a long list, and some people get invited to get their flights paid for, and some don't. But I think for the right people, you should have that in your back pocket, because it does make a difference. I've had that on a recent show. Like I just was like, I'm gonna ask 10 people and see the difference. The people who you offer travel to are like, I'll go to Toronto for a day. That sounds great. So that's a part of it. But I do think those two things, being proactive with filming and attempting to find that money, which I know is hard to find, to bring people up.
Dear
Or
Canada Council, we need a category for these
yeah,
two
no, it's
two
true.
items.
Yeah.
Okay, this
I,
one
I,
might be
I
oh, go
guarantee you
ahead.
other councils do have that. It's not uncommon. I think it's actually more common than we think. The UK, Ireland tax grants do it. Like it is more common than we think. And it's not, and it's a very important cause for Canadian expansion.
All right, this might be a bit controversial, um, but let's try it, Thomas. Okay, oftentimes a new Canadian piece might get picked up by a US producer. The Canadian director is replaced with an American, even though the Canadian director has gotten the piece to where it is. How do we compete with this or get our work known enough to be in the mix?
It's a great question. Goes back to the zeitgeist thing. I don't think we'll ever compete with like just with like the soundproofness of I think of like cities. Like I think it's hard to expect someone in another country to be like, well, I know this person's great, right? So it's going to be about like the work itself, I would say for the most part. Like if someone sees the work and goes, well, this is the production. So that's like I think the most important thing is like breaking through the internet with publicity of someone's career is probably very challenging, or possible these days. But I do think that, more than ever, it's like, well, who are the producers of that project? Because listen, there's examples of this happening and the show's not successful, and there's examples of that happening and the show being very successful. So I think like it depends on the show, it depends on the specificity of the thing, whatever. But it goes back to the role of the producer at times. It's important to know who you're in bed with. So whoever the director is, the writer, you know, the rights don't get given to a Broadway producer or an international producer until they're given. So what are the terms of that happening? And what are you asking for to protect your artists and your creatives if you value their work? And I think and those relationships. And I think, listen, there may be some examples where like you you're giving the rights away to a Broadway producer or a West End producer, and because of budgets or because of housing or because of the whatever, like it can't happen. And I also think a lot of times it's not thought about. And then or it's just like somehow it's like, well, they wanted somebody else, but it's like, did they even ask? Was there even a conversation? Often I think it's probably 50-50. I think sometimes it's like, no, we're moving on because I know the person I want. And sometimes it's like they give the rights and then, okay, new production. And then it happens to be very similar. That's my that's my somewhat political answer to that question.
Thank you. What do you see the difference between Canadian versus other global directors or choreographers?
Well, they're all like world class. Canada's world class. We have tall poppy syndrome. We all have that, but like Canadian talent, directors, actors, creatives, etc., bar none, as good as anywhere else. The difference is the options of where they can perform, the broadness of the theater sector. There because of the draw of the West End, the draw of Broadway, it's the bright, shiny light. And so everything is like, when's it going to go there? Is it going to go there? And it doesn't matter what your project is. Like, when sunflowers turn to the sun, everything's kind of like Broadway. Like, when's Broadway? And because Canada doesn't have that in the same way. Obviously, there's examples of it, Mervis, etc., but it doesn't happen in the same way. I think that the opportunity to play with scale at times doesn't happen. Obviously, like Tom at Stratford or etc. Eventually you get there, but it doesn't happen for a lot of people. A lot of people, the scale of the work you can do fits into the various regional theaters that we have and the budgets and the whatnot. And when budgets are tighter, everything's tighter, production value gets tighter. So I do think the yeah, I think the scale, the opportunity to work with scale, and I don't even mean scale is good or bad. I just mean that is one example of like a difference, I think, in some other cities. I also think, like, to completely say the opposite, I think that Canada can do more to own that, we don't have scale. Scale is not always what we do. There's so many good examples of like, what do we have? We have crafts, we have artisans, we have makers, we have all the tools we need to be successful. We have the manpower, the people power, but we don't maybe have the crazy budgets or the revolving set or whatever. And that's okay. But how do we use what we have in a new, exciting way and challenge ourselves every single time? And I think that is the opportunity in Canada. And it's just continuing to push that as far as possible. And I think there's like a bajillion examples of that, like the Soul Pepper show, like so
Profundus,
good. Yeah,
Profundus.
so good, so good. And that is like, I think that's a good example of like there's scale in that show, but it's a 300-seat theater, and that show could be on the National Theater stage or it could be in a back alley, and the show would be basically the same. And I think, I mean, I guess that's like any question. Like Jen's in the show right now. Like I'm always one of my favorite directors before I worked with them was John Tiffany and Stephen Hoggett. Like their relationship, just like we can do anything anywhere and it will blow your brain. And I think just like owning that and something like owning the limitations, I think building the Broadway in Toronto from scratch is gonna take a long time. If even that's important. I don't even know if that's important anymore, to be honest. Versus like having a vibrant theater industry that's supported by government and it has grants, and continuing to fight for that. People would want that in the States in a different way, right? You can't really get a grant for anything in the States right now, and that's its own bag of beans, to say the least.
Yeah, I think that, the UK model is certainly enviable for so many of us here in Canada and how theater is supported.
I will
Um,
say though, actually on that point, good point, that I do think Canada needs a tax credit. And they need to find a way to incentivize production in Canada. There's a film and TV tax credit, I believe. Where's the theater tax credit? It should be for, we love the grants, more grants, and the productions that happen both in the not-for-profit and the commercial sector. There should be a scheme where you get a percentage of what you spend back as a check or back as a part of your, like, we do all this data that's like a one play that runs for six weeks fills every restaurant around the theater. There should be HST tax credit that goes back to the theater, and it builds the coffers and allows the work to continue. And it is transformational in the UK. I think it's like 30%. Like I think every dollar you spend, I think they call it qualified production cost, and I should know this because it's my job, but I forget. But I think every dollar that you spend on like a qualified production cost. So like I don't think buying an ad like in the New York Times costs it, but like a salary, development, some digital spend, whatever, you get 30 cents back on the dollar. And you submit your thing at the end of your production or after you open, and within a few months you get a check. And I think that look at Broadway. There's a New York State tax credit, which you can get up to, I think it's up to $3 million of your production costs, which I think is not just for Broadway. It's like Broadway and off Broadway, I think. It came after the pandemic. They were trying to incentivize people bringing their shows back and developing new work. And, the season after the first season, like post Moulin Rouge, there was like 10 new musicals, and why? Because there was a tax credit. There was a way to be able to go to investors and say, even if it's not a huge hit, we'll get a check at the end and we'll be able to pay back blah. There'll be something. Or if you're not for profit, there's something to incentivize making some bigger swings, or even just making swings in the first place, because there's a mitigation of that risk. Um, and the tax credit has gone away in the States. They ran out of money. But how many new musicals there were on Broadway this year? Like two. And there should be like seven, and they're all going to next season because they can't raise their money. So it's pretty dire in New York too, I will say, when it comes to new work, and how much we rely on government support to enable the arts as if it's a common good. The days of things starting in Toronto, hiring Toronto actors, many of you, I know many of you have done that before, then go to Broadway after, etc. That will happen again if there's a tax credit.
Where do you see the industry turning in the next 5 years? Do you have an idea? Your crystal ball, Thomas.
This is where I get slightly pessimistic. I am worried about the Canadian theater. I'm worried about the world theater. I'm worried about theater everywhere. We're not going to solve everything. We're always going to have theater will always feel like it's on the precipice of disaster, because I think that's something what makes it special, because we're like all fighting to keep something really special. But if we got a tax credit for 30 cents on the dollar, it might be a little bit easier for everybody. And maybe we could just say, like, this is a really important thing that shouldn't go away. And I do think we without big thinking like that, we will be in a challenged place, because ultimately for the people who invest in at least the commercial theater in the States, it's mostly a hobby. It's like a hobby. It's like, and if the hobby isn't fun anymore, or it's not even remotely profitable, and I don't even mean, like, most investors do not invest to make money, for the record. They may invest because they love theater and they want to see the show and come to opening night and meet the lead actor. That's why they invest. But it can't be like totally unappealing. And I think that's true, like commercial, not for profit, whatever. That's the pessimistic part, which is, I think, which I feel very strongly about. But I think the optimistic part is just like, more than ever, we have to all work together and think creatively. How do we have a relation in different places in the country, in the world, in between both sectors of the industry, to unlock big thinking, getting a show more than just once a 6 week run? How do we just like, oh, that grant over there is for this. I can bring your show there, then you bring my show there. Just like, it's easier said than done. But I do think it's like the community of that is kind of crucial to navigating the challenges. I'll also say I wrote my thesis at Columbia on the future of the Canadian theater, so I do love it very deeply. And it basically was all about like co-productions, and how for a country that doesn't have a national theater like the way that the UK does, and a lot of countries don't, but a lot of countries do, and most of the ones that do have a very small geography. So Canada does have this geography problem in terms of how we feel like we're all connected as one country, and we're not just a Toronto focused theater industry. But how does, again, tax credit, or how do we incentivize the work across province, across theaters, so that that new musical, Stephanie, that you're directing, choreographing, that's starting at the Arts Club, it actually has 5 developmental productions, and it goes all the way to Adam, and then suddenly you're all the one show, which on this, like, the script is great, but it needs time.
Mhm.
Can Canada develop their own next great shows by all working together and owning that world premiere? And then every step of the way, you have a couple days of tech, and you have a week of music and lyric, and then you get to the end of it, and suddenly you got a good fucking show that's ready to go. And I think
Adam,
that,
I'm ready. It's ready for Charlottetown. It's
yeah.
coming to you.
Now the audience part we got to tackle. That's a whole other conversation of the future of audiences.
All right, I have one final question before we turn it over to Q&A. So, do you think there's space for Canadian stories to have Canadian creatives on global stages?
Yes, absolutely. It's just about what is that story and does it resonate with the world? That's it. You know, why does Come From Away, why is it successful? It's helpful that it's a Canadian story with a lot of Americans. That is one way in. I mean, it's about international. It's also just like really moving. It's just like moving. And I do think like maybe as my ADHD develops or I'm like whatever, I'm just like, I think the simplicity of storytelling about, I mean, I love Natasha Peer, like so confusing, like what's going on. Great. Love that show. It's one of my favorite musicals. But also just like beautiful plays and musicals about humans going through shit that's 90 minutes, maybe 105. Could be longer. It's worth it. But that's just like, it just touches something clearly and then you go home. I think that that kind of work, is just like going back to scale. The one thing Canada does have, your shows aren't that big. Our shows are not huge, right? So that's a good thing because then we can export them and we can tour them and we don't have to reconceive, we don't have to rebuild. We can actually, and even the first time you build something, build it to tour. Maybe spend $5,000 more for the hinges to fold as opposed for the hinges to not fold. And then you don't have to pay your labor twice. And you already have the thing that could go somewhere else. And you can put it in storage and then bring it back and you don't have to put it in the garbage and rebuild it. And I don't think it's about writing. I don't think you can write you can't write for the tour. You can't write for the thing. But I do just think like the things that will resonate and do resonate are universal. And that's true. That's true anywhere. We also just don't have the benefit of like, we receive American UK culture and we're like, oh, that's American. Oh, that's UK, where it doesn't happen as much the other way around. So we have in some ways more work to do for something to be Canadian or not. It's sort of like, I think the world doesn't always know what our culture is. It's quite reduced on a world scale. That's why people think we're American every day of our lives when we leave Canada, right? But what is universal is like just the storytelling and human beings interacting. And I think that's always going to be well received if the writing is good.
Thank you, Thomas. That's just been such a great conversation. Really appreciate all your candid answers.
So we just had the wonderful Thomas Swayne talking to us. A couple of highlights from that is Thomas said a good producer-director relationship is where you have each other's backs. A producer can ask where my attention is needed and where it is not, what a show needs and what does it not need. Sonia Friedman said a good producer won't assume anything. Thomas says a show is successful when it knows what it is and when everyone is on the same page. Thomas sees himself as a connector and sometimes working for the good of the project and the good of theatre. Thomas says we have to work together and think creatively. We are so lucky to have him here today. Thank you, Thomas Swayne, and thank you to our incredible hostess with the mostest, Stephanie Graham.
This podcast was made possible by Canada Council for the Arts and brought to you by the Canadian Guild of Stage Directors and Choreographers. CGDC advocates for the rights, interests, and protection of professional stage directors, choreographers, and their assistants and associates.
To learn more, give them a follow on Insta at official CGDC or check out their website, cgdcweb.com. If you enjoyed this podcast, give us a review, a like, or a follow. And if you have any questions or queries about today's episode, please shoot us an email over at canadianguilddc@gmail.com. Thanks for helping us build better pathways and being a part of our community.